welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Verum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast, Gabe.
Hey, it's good to be here, and I'm excited for round 2, Unexpected. We're going to continue through the Wheel of Time, and we're going to pick up at the story of Camelin and go all the way to the end of the book today. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, because there's too much in this book, and so we thought we could do...
Too much!
We thought we could do 2 episodes, but we'll probably do 3 because there was just too much, and we didn't get through it all quick enough. Because we don't want these podcasts to be like 2 hours, because a 2-hour podcast is a pretty big... commitment, so probably a lot of people aren't going to listen to a 2-hour podcast. So this one might be a little shorter though, because we're hopefully going to finish the book out. But I don't know, we'll see. We'll see. Might still be an hour. We'll see what happens. So yeah, we're going to pick up actually a little before Camo. We're going to pick up in Matt and Rand's story whenever they got separated and they went down the river into Whitebridge. So we'll pick up in Whitebridge with those two, and then we'll do their story up to Camelin, and then whenever everybody comes back together in Camelin, then we'll finish out what happened at the end of the book. Yes, as always, make sure you guys follow us on social media. We're on YouTube. You can go subscribe over there if you want to watch the video version of the podcast. Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads. You can check out our website, pagesoflight.com, see our blog and whatever other new stuff we're doing over there. And yeah, I think let's just jump in. So in Whitebridge, we have so everybody gets split up in after Shadar Logoth, because there was that what was the thing that was chasing them, like the curse? Can't remember what that was, but
started with an M. It wasn't Mordith, and it wasn't Manchin, which is the black wind that's in the wave.
Mashadar.
Mashadar.
So the Mashadar is chasing them out of Shadar Logoth. Words.
Yeah.
So they all get split up, and so we have Rand, Matt, and Tom. They're together, and they go to Whitebridge, and basically they are there, and they're in this inn, and Tom is doing his gleeman stuff to get them a room and some food and all of that kind of stuff. And but then there's the Murdraw is on their heels and chasing them, and this is where Tom it says that he died, but we never see his death on the page. So I'm going to say that he's probably not dead, even though that's what they're saying in the book throughout the rest of the story, that Tom is dead. He sacrificed himself to save us. It was a type of sacrifice, though. He gave them all his gleeman stuff. He gave him his flute and his juggling balls and all those different things. And he allows them to get away, which is a good sacrifice. I liked Tom as a character. I think he was...
I did too.
He's a cool guy. He's got a lot of cool stories and an interesting backstory that we'll probably talk about in now part 3 of this podcast series on the Eye of the World. But yeah, I think he was interesting character, and I think he helped the Emmons Field boys kind of grow up a little bit, because he was maybe like the father figure in their party almost. Like he was the person that would give them advice and tell them about history and things that happened beforehand. And Lan's, I think he's kind of a distant character, so he wasn't as like relational with the Emmons Fielders, and so I think Tom is more of that like relational character that they could talk to more.
I think Lan calls Rand sheep herder for basically the whole book. Come on, sheep herder.
Yeah, that's what Lan calls them. Yeah. So it's kind of like.
But yeah, I also like. Yeah, I also liked Tom Maryland as a character because he's kind of got this bigger than life personality, and they always talk about his colorful cloak, and he'd make the juggling balls appear out of nowhere, and he just seems like a really fun character. And so yeah, at that inn in Whitebridge, the innkeeper actually like asked them to leave. He said something along the lines of like, there was someone here looking for you earlier. He said he was looking for a gleeman and 3 boys, and it was only Matt and Rand, but he recognized them and said, I'd appreciate it if you'd finish your beer and get off my property. Is what that guy said.
Which happens in a few inns, actually. Seems like they're always getting places, and then they're like, I heard people were looking for you. Get out of here.
Yeah,
so.
It's kind of that always being pursued sort of feel to the book. And then they end it with like Rand and Matt running and escaping, and they hear Tom screams, but like Tyler said, we don't know what happened to Tom. And Moraine later in the book, it's actually when they're in the ways, she just says one day, I don't think Tom's dead. Which just like comes out of nowhere. Everyone. Yep.
If Moraine says it, it's probably true.
Yeah. And then we have the story of Matt and Rand getting to Camelin by so first they're like farm hands, they're like walking, and they'll catch a ride with someone, and then they'll work on a farm, and then they're being chased off by people because people are suspicious in this time and age. Like, they don't trust outsiders, and they get to sleep in, like, barns and stuff. And then there's this one family who had, like, 9 kids, and they stayed, and Rand plays the flute, and, like, even the little boy who can barely walk is, like, dancing around, and Matt is juggling the balls, and then at the next town they go to, they become a show. There's like, Matt will juggle and I will play the flute. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they start making their way in the world. They've gotten used to like sleeping outdoors, but now they're getting fed inside an inn, and they're getting actually paid even sometimes. And they start making their way across the country with the idea of getting to Camelin, which is basically the capital. It's where the queen lives. It's huge compared to like all of like the cities that they thought were huge. They were like
Barillon.
This Camelin would swallow 20 of these cities easily.
Yeah.
Like, it's just full and bustling with people, and it's a real metropolitan area. And when you get to Camelin, there's like the white faction, which are the people who are against the queen, and then the red who are in support of the queen. But they're making their way across the country, and they end up at a place called
the Four
Kings.
That's the name of the inn.
Yep. And this is a place where Rand, it just feels uneasy. He's like, I've been to a lot of places, and he identifies that the innkeeper is a skinny man. And he didn't. He's like, why is he skinny?
That's right.
And you meet the innkeeper, and he's just a terrible, misogynistic man. Like, he just backhands his female workers. Like, he talks down to them, and he's just.
I think they went to that one because there was like 3 other inns or something, or 2 other inns that already had like performers in them. It's like this was their only choice essentially. So, which. You can see why it was the only choice, because it was a pretty sketchy place.
Yeah, it seemed like a sketchy place. They said like the real reason people were there to just fondle the barmaids and to like not really listen to music. And then there was lots of fights, and people were getting kicked out all the time. Rand discerns that Hake, who is the owner there, is after their goods. He's realizing that he's eyeing up Rand's sword. He wants to steal it.
The flute.
And then he realizes, and the flute, that got a smile at one point in the presentation, and he just tells Matt, like, I think he's trying to rip us off. It's all noisy in the end, and Matt's just like, uh-huh. And then he was like, we should leave. And Matt's like, I'm hungry. I want to eat some food. And
This is
then
where
he
you
was
like
like, all right,
seriously
we'll
start
stay.
to see the effects of that dagger. Where Matt's like, I don't care. I just want to like sleep and eat my food. He's
Yeah.
like not aware of like anything
Um,
that's going on around him.
yeah. And so they continue to play. They even like try and get, it's like pelting rain outside.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like a guy who's interested in them. He sat down, like he comes in late, and people are like, "Why is he out so late?" Um, and he
Yep.
is basically looking for Matt and Rand, and he's a dark friend,
Yep.
and they notice him.
He's like staring at them
And
for their whole performance.
Yep. So the performance ends, and they're being shown to their guest quarters, and the two bodyguards are with Hake, Strom, and the other one starts with a J, and they're like walking them into the bedroom. So they get in there. They know that they're like being targeted to be stolen from. And so they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. So they go to break out. And then there's bars across the window. So they're like, they found a crowbar and they're like waiting for lightning to strike because it's raining outside. And they're like trying to break out.
Yep.
And then the dark friend's at the door and he's like, let me in and you will be the dark one's puppet and all this stuff. And
Yep.
and then as I told Tyler this and at the beginning before we started recording the podcast. So they're in a desperate situation. They're trying to get out of this basically prison cell. It's got bars on the window, and then they have the dark friend. They're cornered, and then all of a sudden, during this rain and this storm, lightning strikes and it hits like the bars and it explodes out the back, like the back wall, so that they are able to escape. It also disables the dark friend. He can't pursue them. And my thought, because we learn at the end of this book that Rand is the dragon reborn, destined to fight the dark one, and also to go mad, and
He can channel the one power.
true source. Yep, he can channel the one power. So my thought was that this was in a time of desperation. He actually called upon the one power.
Yep.
Without him knowing, and it led to a miraculous escape. Because he was between a rock and a hard place with the
Yep.
with the jail cell and the and the dark friend on the other side of the wall. So he they actually ended up escaping, and they hitched a dragon not a dragon ride. Rand is
epic.
the dragon. Yeah, but no, they were on like a farmer's like
Yeah, like his
like wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he even left late from the town, and they got out of there. But yeah, did you have any thoughts on the Four Kings or the adventures across the country?
Yeah, I think I just liked that scene. It just felt like really tense because you can feel like we're in this sketchy place and there's these sketchy people and they want to steal from us, and it's just like kind of slowly building up into this like little climactic scene where you have the exploding wall and them narrowly escaping the dark friends. But yeah, that's like a classic fantasy trope of like in your moment of desperation, like that's when your powers manifest, and that's when like in Harry Potter when in the first movie, like Harry makes the glass where the snake is disappear, and like because he's mad at Dudley, so like his emotions and his like in the situation of desperation that he's in, like that is what manifests his power and his use of magic. So yeah, it's just like a classic kind of fantasy trope. It's always cool because like when you're put in those situations, it's always like a very desperate situation, and
Above what you're capable of dealing with.
yes, which is why you have to manifest your supernatural powers to get you out of the situation. So because you wouldn't if you didn't have those powers, then you wouldn't have been able to get out. Like you would have gotten mugged or killed or whatever it is. And there's also a few other scenes. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also a few other
yeah.
scenes. Okay, yeah, you go.
All right, I'll go and then you'll go.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say with the one power, the wisdom, Nynaeve.
Yes.
She it's mentioned when she's with Lan, the warder, and Moraine that she probably had healed people with the one power and she didn't realize it.
Right.
And Moraine explains that like you may have healed someone that was close to death, and then she fell deathly ill, and that's kind of what happens to Rand, is that later like he's as weak as a kitten, and Matt is kind of having to take care of him and get him through, and so like he fell sick after what we think is causing the lightning strike to this to the inn, and then Nynaeve had that experience where she healed someone, and then like a few days later she had this very very
bad reaction
sickness for like for like 12 hours. So that's another reason I thought, oh, that's got to be the one power.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead, what you were gonna say.
No, I was just gonna say there's a few other scenes, like if we move on from Four Kings, where like they get to a town and then there's like dark friends like waiting for them essentially and like trying to find them, because Baelzamon, whenever they have the dreams, he's able to like see kind of like into where they are, I think, and that's how he's able to like kind of track where they're going, but I don't think he knows like what they look like, so that's why it's like the dark friends like think they know who they're looking for, but they're not quite sure. Like there was that one scene with that woman who like cornered them in the stable. Do you remember that scene?
Oh yeah, that was a good scene.
I can't remember what that character's name was, but
well, actually, they said in the book that they don't remember her name and it was never given. Like again, Robert Jordan just created a person that filled out the story, but he specifically did not give her a name. It was just a nameless dark friend who attacked them, and she had this crazy dagger that she Matt defends Rand while he's sick, and it stabs the wall, and the wall starts like turning black and like basically corroding is kind of the way that I felt about it. So this dagger had some dark magic in it. It's
like the dagger from Lord of the Rings at the Watchtower, the Morgul blade. And then like whenever he like picks it up, it like disintegrates. It's like, well, that's no good. That's the movie version probably. But yeah. That was a cool scene. I don't know. There was just a few other like
one
little
of the
places.
last ones before. Before they get to Camelin, because there is another guy who's like, I'm a dark friend, and but he doesn't like run out of the town, but Rand and Matt escaped from that town because he said that they had like a fade there and that they were gonna start looking for them, but.
I did like that there were instances where there were nice people on their travels as well, like the people that they hitched rides with, or and like some of those characters would like try to give them advice because they're like, you guys are running from something, aren't you, or you guys are being hunted, or like, and they were trying to like give them advice like, I wouldn't get mixed up in this stuff, or I would just go back home, or like stuff like that, where they were trying to like look out for like the young boys, because they could probably like sense that they were a little bit out of their depth and they might get themselves killed or injured or something based on whatever they were dealing with.
Sure.
And I think Matt usually had like some snide comment like, why are we supposed to trust you or something, because he was like cursed by the dagger. So like Matt was never like helping anybody's case. Or like he wasn't helping their case, like trying to not look suspicious, because Matt was always like clutching his dagger and like has his like cloak up, and like he just makes them look more suspicious, I think. But but he did help Rand get through while he was sick, so props to him for that. So
good job, Matt.
Good job, Matt. So then they finally get to Camelin. Which is, I think, where they finally get a little bit of breathing room, because they get to go to that inn called the Queen's Blessing, where they actually meet a nice innkeeper who wants to help them, and he's on the Queen's side, and he gives them a room for free, and all this kind of stuff. So this is like kind of like the calm before the storm, like before the climactic end, where they're reunited with the other party members, and they kind of just get like a reprieve finally. Although except Matt, because he's got the curse, So, and this is really also
me. Pause.
Sure.
For a second. Before we get to who they meet, I just want to say like how different the world is now. Like I feel like, one of the reasons why the innkeeper took them in at the Queen's Blessing is because they knew Tom Maryland. Yes. And he had a strong relationship with Tom Maryland, and he's like, yep. I see you're carrying his flute. Yep. I know that you have been with him. And then, Randa's like, he died saving us, and he's been a good friend. I'm sorry if you liked him or he was your friend. He was our friend too. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that exists anymore, at least in my experience. Like, I've never experienced... I mean, okay, I have, but it is very rare when, like, someone will take you in and take care of you because of a relationship they previously had. In my life, that has happened several times, but one that I can think of is when I moved to Louisiana for my first teaching job. I moved in for 3 weeks with a woman I had never met because she was my dad's cousin. We had never met before, and she was just like, yeah, you need a place to stay, live in my house until you get an apartment. And I had some intermittent contact with her after that, but I was in my 20s and I didn't really make an effort to be like, wow, that was really generous of you. Like, and I think back, like, would I open my house to a stranger that I had never met?
Sure.
And I just love that, like, there are relationships in this book that are so strong and so powerful that I will give of myself because of, like, I will give you my inn, I will give you free food, I will give you a place to stay because
I'll protect you even.
Merit. I'll protect you. Like, yeah, I'll even like stick my neck out for you.
Yeah, because the children of the light came. Maryland. Yeah.
Yep.
And they tried to like shake down the innkeeper, and he was like, "You get out of here! I'm gonna call the Queen's Guards."
And all the end people stood and like took a stand. Yeah, that was a cool scene.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't think that exists anymore. Like, hey, you were good friends with my friends. Like, okay. Like, I feel like that. We live in such a world where like that is just such an Let's bring that back.
Yeah.
I want to bring that back. Like, hey, you were a good friend of my friend. Like, let me take care of you. Like, let me show you a good time. Like, let me do things that are in my ability to make your life better.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what God would want. And like, I just was impressed that happened. Like, there's some other things with like signals of trust between characters. And so, I just wanted to take a second to highlight that because I just feel like that's so rare in our world today. And I would love to see that be more prevalent. Like, hey, I will take care of you because of, like this relationship that I've had. And I know that person's a good person. Therefore, I can believe this of you. I was just struck by that.
And just like
how rare that is today.
Like Christian hospitality as well. Like, if you have like a brother or sister in Christ that's like in need, like you should want to be able to like do something to be able to help them. Like whenever we had COVID, like the amount of people that said like, "Oh, I'm going to bring you food. Like, when can I come over?" Like, it was just very encouraging just to be like, wow, there's just people in our life that we know that whenever we get sick, like they will just go out of their way to, go to the store and buy us whatever we need. And like, they didn't ask for us to pay them back. Like, it was just something out of like the goodness of their heart that they wanted to be able to help us in our time of need. It was just like a sickness for us. But like some people are in like serious needs, like they're going to lose their house, or like, they're in, pain, whether like something's going on with their kid, or, whatever it is. Just like situations where like you can have a relationship where you can just be there for somebody. Maybe you don't even have to like do like give them something like monetarily or physically, but you could just like be with them in that time, like just sit with them and talk with them, or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't have to be like a thing where you like give them money or like give them a physical item. It can just be like you give your time and you give of your self and your like emotional like well-being, and you can, you know, like speak into their life in a way, or like give them advice, or, you know, there's like a ton of different ways that you could like be hospitable to people if they're in some kind of need, like needing situation.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree that is something that probably there isn't too much of in our world anymore. So yeah, would be nice to have more
Be
of
the
that.
change you wish to see in the world. I think that was Gandhi.
Yeah.
Still, it's true.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. You were side quest complete.
Side quest complete. It's good.
Let's talk about who they met. Did you want to take that?
Yeah, so they met this really cool character, which we did mention in the previous podcast, I think. But his name is Loyal. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
but he's an Ogier, which is, it's like they look like Trollocs, yes, but they're like sentient, like more tame Trollocs. So they're like, or do they not look like
they're like
Trollocs?
their own people with their own culture. Like Trollocs are very like tribal and like driven by fear and like just like violent and controlled by the Murdral, and like the like they call them the Builders, I think. Like they're a society of the Ogier. They're very old, they have long lifespans, and they want to they are very in touch with nature, and they want to see nature like succeed and everything. Very different from the Trollocs, even though they sometimes like
and they have like really long lifespans. They kind of reminded me of elves in a way from Lord of the Rings, where they have long lives. They're very wise. Like they're very learned. Like they, I don't know. It just kind of reminded me a little bit of them, and they seem very like well spoken, and they're very thoughtful, and like they're always thinking of like, what are the effects of this, or like what are the long-term ramifications, because they live such long lives. Like they have more of an understanding of like history, like compared to
I
the
think they
Emmons
said
Fielders.
that Loyal likes to give at least 300 years of background to any story that he's telling.
Yeah, and then whenever he was telling that story to the Aes Sedai, to Moraine, she's like, it needs to be a quick story, a fast story. He's like, well, I have a lot of prologue and I got a lot of backstory I need to tell you, so like I'll try, but like I'm not making any promises.
She's like, be brief, and Robert Jordan was like, and the Ogier squinted or something as if he didn't know what the word meant or something.
Yeah, I thought he was a really cool character, and I enjoyed.
And again, it's just like the discovery thing, where like here's another like character of another race who is like just part of the world that like you like come to accept it. Like, you know, Perrin had found his way to the steading, you know, with Elias and Egwene, and then here's the Ogier, who is like a carer for the steading, and there's different steadings, and basically the Ogier don't live among men. They stay in the steadings, away from people. They stay with their own kind. And Loyal, at 90 years old, he's like an 18-year-old. He's like, I'm gonna leave and I'm going to explore the world, and maybe I am too hasty. And that's kind of like where he is. He's trying to be out and see the world. And then he crosses the path with the 3 Taviran, and he's like, oh, I'll just jump on board with these guys.
Yeah. Which is, it's interesting. Like he is like the hasty Ogier, but like compared to like the humans, like he's super slow, and like he doesn't do anything fast, but
very
like,
thoughtful.
But like within his own people, he is like a hasty Ogier, which so like if you met the other Ogier, like they'd be worse than Loyal. I get worse isn't a good word, but
Tyler did air quotes for people who are listening.
On the audio, worse. Yes, they wouldn't be like worse characters, or like, but they would be worse in the sense that like they would be even
like
slower.
they'd embody
or,
like slowness even more.
Yes.
Like,
yes. But they, like the other Ogier, like don't leave the steading, essentially. Like they just stay in their little hometowns. Maybe sort of like the Emmons Fielders. Like the Emmons Fielders don't generally, leave the town that they grew up in, right? Like they don't go on adventures. They don't go and, search out new interesting places. And so he's kind of unique in his people. So yeah, I just liked seeing his conversations with Rand, because he doesn't really talk to Matt, because Matt's just sitting up in the room being cursed and all.
Yep.
Matt is such like a sad storyline. He just like finds this dagger and then it just like ruins him basically until the very end. So hopefully he gets to be.
Actually, yeah, he's gonna get healed here pretty soon in the storyline.
That's true, although not completely healed.
Not completely. It removed the taint from him, but there's a bond between him and the dagger that will kill him.
It will return
if it's not treated.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But first, there's a scene where Rand wants to go out and see Logain, because throughout this whole kind of story, we're hearing of this the false dragon, whose name is Logain, and he's been captured, and the Aes Sedai are taking him to Caemlyn. And so that's why there's a ton of people who are on the road whenever they're going towards Caemlyn. That's why there's a ton of people that they can hitch rides with and stuff, because there's a bunch of people who are going to Caemlyn so they can see this false dragon, Logain. And so Rand goes to where Logain is being transported, and he climbs up on this wall so he can see. And there's this scene where like Logain basically like stares straight at Rand, and he like gives like this crazy laugh kind of thing or something like that. And he just like Logain just seems like an insane kind of character. Like I don't know, he just seems. I think it'll be interesting to see him in the TV show, because I think they're gonna like build him up as a character more than he was in this book, because we only really get that one scene with him, and then everything else is just like talking about who he is.
Character later,
yes.
But yeah, and also there's like there's the homeless guy who's like looking for Rand, and then Rand like sees him, and then he like runs, and that's when he gets to the wall to look at Logain. So Logain is a man who can channel the power. So he's like, that's why people think that he's the false dragon, is because he's a man who can channel the power, and then they have to have the Aes Sedai there to contain him.
Yep.
So they have to have enough Aes Sedai to prevent him from touching the true source. Because, if you can wield magic, you can easily break out of a cage, which is kind of what they had him in. And
I
so
think
they
have to call it gentling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like, gentling them is like,
it's like keeping you
away
in
their
prison.
Power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't have the ability to touch the one power anymore if you're gentled. So, later we learn that this beggar is Podon Thane, who is a character, again, who is introduced in the first few pages of the book, where we're back at...
He was in Emmons Field.
Yeah, he was in Emmons Field. He's been coming there for years. He's a peddler. And we learn that he has been touched by the Dark One to kind of pursue relentlessly.
Yeah. We don't learn that until a little bit later, but yeah. But that's why he keeps showing up. Like he shows up in like different towns.
Those Easter eggs. Like when you've read it once, you go back and you're like, that must have been Podon Thane, who was like the beggar, because they never identify him as such. But he's just a ratty looking man. So Rand climbs up this wall. He sees Logain, and they have their moment. And then he falls backwards and he hits his head, and all of a sudden the daughter Eris is there taking care of him, and like he's in the castle. He's on like the royal grounds where the queen lives and her daughter, and
Yeah, I think her name's Elaine. Elaine and Gwyn.
Yep. Elaine and her brother.
Yeah, Gawain, I think.
Gawain.
Like that.
And yeah, there's like two of them. There's like there's two G names. There's Gawain, the brother, and then the other one, Galad. Yeah, who goes and basically tattletales on them that they have a stranger in there. So Rand is unceremoniously brought before Queen Morghese, and he was just like, oh, she's so beautiful, and if she was in Emmons Field, like every man would be lined up to marry her. And he's like, oh, I can't believe that I'm thinking of her like this. And she's there with an Aes Sedai counselor who kind of looks at Rand and says he is at the center of all this change, and like and basically identifying him as ta'veren. And so this is kind of an introduction into like the royal court and how
some of the politics going on.
Some of the politics. Rand has his heron-marked sword, but he bought some red like cover to go like over cloth, it so he could hide the cloth. But that symbolizes in Caemlyn that you support the queen. And that's, also why he was taken in at the queen's blessing. He had his red, in addition to being, friends with Tom Marilyn.
Yep.
Because if he had the white, and they said that the people in the white, there were much more of those people, and that they would beat you up, basically, if you were wearing the red, symbolizing that you support the queen. And so Rand has a chance to exchange words with the queen, who says, like, you have the two, she identifies him and says, like, you have the two rivers on your tongue. So she believes his story, and there's
but like
still
he doesn't look like a Two Rivers person.
Oh, right, because he looks like an Aielman with the red in his hair and the blue. And so even though he looks like an Aielman.
Yeah, it gives you more hints on like his backstory, because at the very beginning, whenever he was dragging his father Tam back to the town after, we actually never really talked about that scene, but at the very beginning of the book, whenever the Emmons Fields gets attacked, there's a scene with Tam and Rand where they are attacked in their little house, in their farmhouse, and that's where Tam brings out the sword, and he kills some of the Trollocs, but then Rand has to like drag him back to the town, and this is where Tam is saying like, in like his delirium state, like saying like,
he has like fever dreams.
Yeah, something about like I can't remember the specific words that he used, but like
it was
the revelation is that he's not Rand's father, essentially.
Right. Like, you've always wanted a kid, my wife. Like, we'll take this one, and we'll take care of him, and yeah.
But like that scene where like she says that you don't look like a Two Rivers person, that fuels the mystery of like, he doesn't look like an Emmons Fielder, so that means he's definitely from somewhere else, which is why Tam says that he's not like his actual father, and he was taken from somewhere else. So yeah, just some more little nuggets that we get along the way of who Rand is and his backstory and who his father was and all that kind of stuff. So I'm loving the intrigue on that.
Yeah. And then Rand gets to leave the palace, but then he's going to be pursued. I feel like it's either by like the Queen's Guard or like the Aes Sedai. I think it was the Queen's Guard. And so he goes back to the Queen's Blessing, and he talks to the innkeeper there, and that's when the White Cloaks come in, and he says, "Get out of here, you filthy White Cloaks, and we don't harbor dark friends here." And then all of a sudden, someone in the kitchen says, "There's someone here to see, Rand and Matt." Yep.
Yeah.
And who is it? Lo and behold, Moraine and Lan, Nynaeve, and Perrin and Egwene. They're all there in the kitchen, and they all have their Emmons Field reunion.
Yay.
And they're all excited to see each other.
Great scene. Just good to see everybody back together.
Yep. And then that's when Moraine goes up and sees Matt and notices that he's tainted. Oh, and I liked her reaction in the room where, like, Robert Jordan was like, she was watching him the way that you would watch a viper. Like, he is
like
that dangerous.
pounce.
Like,
yeah.
yeah. And then he does, right? And then he tries
Yep.
to attack Moraine. And then, like I said in the first podcast, that's the description where Lan was in the doorway and then Robert Jordan's like, he didn't bother with the intervening space. And he goes and he grabs Matt's hand, who Matt is, with every ounce of his, young adolescent body, is trying to attack Moraine with this knife. And Lan's just like holding his hand like it's nothing because he's a warder and he's got like super strength. And like, but they did say like, you could see like his tendons like popping out on his arm or something because he was
trying
under
so
an amount
hard.
of strength. Yeah. And then Moraine is able to cleanse Matt and of the tainted dagger from Shadar Logoth, which basically makes you suspicious of everyone and everything. And Matt was just falling deeper and deeper into that. And like you said, like he could have eventually attacked his own friends had that dagger had its way with him. But he has to have the dagger now. It's if he loses
like a part
it,
of
he
him.
may die. Yeah, it's like a part of him, and he has to go to Tarvalin to have it completely removed. But they said that anything that left Shadar Logoth could infect the person that left with that item, so it didn't matter what it was. But and then the Dark One has them, like Perrin and Matt and Rand, and Matt is the one, like there's three characters that they could all be, and like
in their dream.
one has in their dream, and Matt has the dagger. And I just want to know more about Matt. Like, what is his story? Like, why is he Ta'Veren? Because you have Rand, who is the Dragon Reborn, can channel the power, and then you have Perrin, who is got the wolf sense and the wolf eyes, and he can he has those special powers. But what is Matt? Like, Matt isn't superhuman in any way, but like in the dream, he is the character with the dagger. So like the dagger is like a part of his identity and like who he's becoming. But I don't understand what that is because he doesn't seem to have any he's got to have some superpowers, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'll like channel some like dark powers or something like that, where he'll be like maybe at some point in this. I mean, there's 14 books. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen. Maybe there'll be some instance where like he's almost an enemy to Rand or something, and they have to like fight or something. I don't know. It could be interesting because like Matt's his best friend, so it could be like a pretty emotional scene or emotional fight where it's like, it's me or you, dude. Me or you. So
yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, the dreams are always interesting, and there's like symbolism in all of them, or there's just like the Dark One being super powerful and overpowering about like trying to convince them to just come to him essentially and join the Dark Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where we get the scene with they're about to leave because Rand had told everybody like the story with the queen and like they're probably gonna pursue me, so we need to leave. And this is where Loyal says that he needs to come with them, and he was like, oh yeah, I told him he could come with us. And there was some revelation though that it's because
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because so originally they were going to go to Tarvalin, but this is when they finally reveal to Moraine, the three boys, saying that they've been having dreams and Baelzamon is talking to them, and this is when she's like, okay, this is seriously bad, and we need to go straight to the eye of the world right now. Essentially, like we can't mess around going to Tarvalin anymore. Like we have to go straight to the eye of the world and like settle this. Is that how Is that how you remember
That
it?
is a revelation, and yeah, there is two more pieces to that. One was the Ogier said that there was a man who was being
Yes.
like he was recovering in the steading, and he said something about like the eye of the world will be attacked, and this was like
Yes,
20
that's right.
years ago or something. And then also the traveling people told Perrin and Egwene about a person that they had tended to, and he was like the wheel is going to be attacked, or the eye of the world is going to be attacked. And so Moraine hears all this information
Yes.
in a short span of time, and she's like, it can't be a coincidence. We have to go to the eye of the world
And defend it.
which is where, yeah, and defend it, and because that's where the true battle is going to happen. And
Yep.
so that's why they change course here. They're not going to Tar Valon. And the Eye of the World, which Moraine has already found one time, which is surprising because they have the Green Man. Again, another person that is just part of the world, but you are like, oh my gosh, I accept this, who is like, seems like a 20-foot tall tree giant.
He reminds me of the
full
Green
living
Knight.
branches.
Whenever I heard that, I was like, oh, the Green Knight. That's what I was imagining in my head from the movie.
Yeah. And he's like surrounded by butterflies, and he's got
Yeah.
this like dark, like this dead, like scar on his face of like withered leaves and stuff. And
Yep.
and
But
yeah,
we'll get to
he's
him in a
like-
second.
Yeah. So Moraine says, you know, this can't be a coincidence, and on top of that, we have a way to get out of Camelin, because I believe like the Trollocs were coming and they were going to be captured by the Queen's Guard, so they need to find like a way out. And so Loyal, who is very learned and very understanding of the old ways, has learned about a place called The Ways.
Well, I think
And,
Moraine said that we need to take the ways, and Loyal was like, "Nah, we can't do that. It's a bad idea because it's like they're corrupted or something like that." But Moraine's like, "No, we have to take the ways because it's the only way that we can get there in the quickest possible. Like we can't walk there. Like it'd take us forever, right?" So,
Yep.
but
And she
Loyal
was
really
like,
doesn't
"There's
want to
no
do it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it, and she was just saying that it has to be this way because like we have to go to the Eye of the World, which is hundreds of miles away,
Yep.
and yet we have a way to get there through the ways because only an Ogier can navigate the ways, or so they think, to take them there. So basically, if you go into the ways, it's a location that exists kind of outside of the realm of reality. Like time is different there.
Yep.
And it's just kind of like a bunch of bridges and lots of darkness, and it's just kind of like a void.
And there's like these
we haven't talked
signs, like cryptic signs that the Ogier has to read to like make sure they're going the correct avenue or the correct bridge or whatever.
Right.
And then there
And,
was like
the
there was
way-
like a corrupted bridge that was like collapsed so that you take a different route. Yeah, there was a lot of interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, and so the entrance to the ways are found all across the planet, and they were usually tied to the steadings, which we talked about earlier, which is where Ogiers live, and it was a place where like trees were meant to grow and nature was supposed to be abundant. And the one in Camelin has just been so forgotten that it was just like a hole in some guy's like cellar. Like they broke into a cellar and they walked downstairs, and Moraine completes the magic. She finds the symbol and she opens the ways, and they go in, and it's just like they're walking into a mirror. They see like the reflections sink into itself, and they go through, and they're in this world of darkness, and like there's not a lot going on in the ways, and it seems kind of boring, and they're just like we're just kind of on a horse, we're just kind of walking. That's all we're really doing. But it's like really suspicious and weird because it's all dark, and and again, that's where Padan Thane rears his head because they're being followed in the ways, and they're like, "Who is that back there?" And
Yep.
they're like, "If they don't bother us, we're not gonna bother them." And then there's the revelation that the Trollocs had figured out how to use the ways, and that's how they managed to get from the Blight, which is on one side of the world, to the other side of the world where Emmons Field is.
Yep.
And then Rand and all of his friends are getting scared, like, what if we ran into hundreds of Trollocs in here by ourselves in the ways? And then Manchin Chin, which is the black wind of madness that if you were to experience it, you like walk out of the ways a mad person and crazy. And Loyal is very scared of it, encountering that. And then that's like where the ways ends, is like they hear the wind coming, and then they're just like, throw caution to the wind. And even Moraine, unplacable, like no matter how much you throw at her, she's just like, we will be all right, we will go. And she's just like, go
Run.
go run. So that's the thing that chases them out of the ways, is that black wind.
That reminds me of that scene in Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Ring where they're in Moria, and after the Pippin has that drops that skeleton down the well, and then the Balrog comes, and Gandalf is like, this foe is beyond any of you, run. And then they're basically just like, we're running away because we can't fight this thing. That scene reminded me of, like, Moraine is super powerful, but not this time. We need to get out of here. This is a bad time. So then they finally get out. And they go to this place called Faldarra, which is like a castle right up where the Blight is, and this is where basically they're like fighting the Trollocs up there, and there's about to be a battle up there, and they meet this guy's
a lopsided battle that the human forces are going to lose because they're going to be outnumbered 10-1. Trollocs and Fades on the other side.
But they meet this guy up there, the Lord of the Castle. His name's Agilmar. He was a cool character. And he basically tells them
Lord
he basically tells them like a ton of history about like some of the wars and the people from the different battles long ago. So I liked hearing those different stories. And he tries to like send them men with them into the Eye of the World because he's like, oh, I need to help you guys win that battle up there. And they're like, nah, we don't need any help. But it was cool that he would be willing to help them and send men, even though he was so outnumbered for his own battle. Like, he was still willing to give them people to go and help them. Which was a nice touch, I guess. He seemed like a good character. Good guy.
Yeah, again, like he just had so much faith in Moraine and Lan. Because Lan is well known there. Like the 7 towers that had fallen. And basically, if he had agreed to go to the battle, he was like 1,000 lances would show up because you are promising to be there, and people would flock to your leadership. And he said, Aes Sedai, Moraine, like if you come, you'd be worth 1,000 lances as well. And then, then they have to go out into the Blight in search of the, which the Blight is like, it seems very hot there, and also like just decay,
like deserty and
and like all the trees are like poisoned and stuff, and there's weird enemies, and like nature itself is rebelling against the natural order, and it also is spreading. Like the Blight is like alive, and it's like spreading out.
It's like Mordor.
And they're like trying to hold it back.
But like in that scene where like he's asking them to come help him fight in their battle, they're basically like, even if like it doesn't matter what happens with your battle, essentially. Like if we lose our battle at the Eye of the World, like the outcome of your battle is pointless, essentially. So that's kind of like we need to forget about the small battle, and we need to like go and win the war, essentially. Like we need to win the battle that's important. where we can actually stop something and make a difference in whatever's gonna happen in the future.
Yeah, because it's the battle against Shaitan, the Dark One.
Yep.
And then Agomar gets all flustered because he thinks that the Rand, Matt, and Perrin are all male Aes Sedai, and he's like starts sweating and stuff, and Moira's like, no, it's not like that. And then that's when they set out for the Blight.
Yep. Yeah, so they go through the Blight, and then they meet the Green Man up there, who's guarding the Eye of the World. And yeah, we kind of talked about him a little bit earlier. He was a cool character. Again, he reminded me of the Green Knight. I was just picturing like a tree person, kind of like, because he seemed like in tune with nature, and he was just like a gentle, not a gentle giant, but like he seemed like a very large person, but he would do anything to like defend the Eye of the World and protect it with everything that he had, which he does do because he has to give his life defending it. Which another character is just like shows up, he's in there for a few scenes and then he's gone. just more world building and fleshing out of all the stuff going on in this series.
And then the story with the Green Man was that like at the breaking of the world, like when they sealed the Dark One in his contain, I think that's what it was. They like the male and the female Aes Sedai asked the Green Man if he would protect the Eye of the World, and he said, you know, like I was all that they had, and I have like remained true to this promise, you know, for thousands of years. And one more thing about the Green Man is that they said that you can only find him once, and Moiraine had found him before, and she said the key is need. The key is need. If you have to see him, you will see him.
Yep.
And that's why they didn't take people from the from Faldarra, because if one of them had thought like, oh, I'm gonna win honor and win glory, then the Green Man and the Eye of the World would have been unfindable, because it would have been prevented. So yeah, and then we have the encounter at the Eye of the World just outside with the Forsaken. We have 2 Forsaken that show up, which are basically like the super powerful henchmen of the Dark One.
Yeah.
We have 2. Their names are
the ring wraiths. Kind of. If we continue to draw Lord of the Rings parallels.
Yep, because there are some.
Yeah, but the Forsaken, Agonor, and Balthamel. Balthamel.
Yep, Balthamel.
Yeah.
So Balthamel is a very strange character. He's got a carapace head, like the outside of a bug, like as his face, which I thought was interesting. And then like the description, like because he's laughing because it's a frozen face, and then Robert Jordan writes in like, and his laughter seemed to grow wilder even though like he's not speaking or anything.
Yeah.
And the 2 Forsaken are basically there to stop them and to claim the one power, which is for, I looked it up, Sidene.
Yeah.
Is the male half of the power,
which is what's in the Eye of the World. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a big pool of it, and they're there to like claim it and to stop Moiraine and everyone else. And so then the Green Man comes in and he does his defender thing, and he's like, "You will not pass.
Yeah. You will not.
And he takes out.
Not take this."
Yeah, and then he takes out Balthamel by like infecting him with like fungus and all these things that like grow out of him, and he like falls down dead. And then Rand has to fight the other Forsaken, Agonor.
Then there was that scene with Moiraine where she was like trying to hold the 2 Forsaken back, and it like completely used up like all her strength essentially, like she like passed out, I think, or something like that, like trying to hold them back, or she was really weak at least. Maybe she didn't pass out, but
yeah, she's trying to hold them back, and like she like the earth like splits away, and Agenor is just walking on thin air, and like very unconcerned with all of Moraine's best efforts. And Lan was taken out. Like Lan, who's implacable the whole book, the guy just like does a shooing motion with his hand, and Lan is like wiped out. And that just kind of shows you how powerful the Forsaken are, because they're just, if they can take out a warder in one hit.
And then imagine if they were to get the one power, how much more powerful they would be.
Right.
So
and so this is the encounter that happens.
This is the big climax.
And this is where we have the reminiscent of the Sanderlanche, as you introduced me to that term.
Yes, the Sanderlanche.
Yeah, so here comes
the last few chapters, everything happens.
Yeah, so Rand is at the Eye of the World, and him and Agenor are battling over claiming Sidar or Sidene for themselves, and there's like a battle between them. It's like a mental battle, and Rand ends up winning it. And then he's transported to the battlefield. So remember at Faldarra, we were saying that the human forces were preparing to battle the Trollocs, and there's fades by the 100, and that there was a break in the battle, and Rand just kind of like materializes in the battle, and he's seeing how hopeless it is for the human forces, and there's all these Trollocs and fades like riding. And then he goes like Super Saiyan and just like messes stuff up. So he summons like walls of fire, and he like projects them at the enemies, and he burns them alive, and he pounds his fist into the ground, and like these big earthquakes, like big like lands of rock just like ripple out from him and like take out like so much of the enemy hordes. They said that it went from tenfold the number of human forces to just double. So Rand wipes out like 80% of like all of the Dark One's army in just a few seconds, and then he's summoned to fight Shaitan, the Dark One, up. Like, and then he just like starts climbing into the clouds. Like, that's kind of how I pictured it. He was just like going up, and he has to find the Dark One. And then we have the encounter with the Dark One.
So many encounters
at the end here.
I don't remember all the specifics with the encounter with the Dark One.
I think he identifies that he is there's a point, I think before that, maybe it's in Faldarra, where all three of them, like, he learns which one is which, like that Rand's the dragon, and that Matt's the dagger holder, and Perrin is the wolf axe holder. And and then
there was also the scene where I think maybe it was Moraine that was talking to them, saying like, you need to deny him access in your dreams, and if you do that, then he won't have power over you, essentially. And I think a lot of that happens in his final battle with Baal-Zaman, where he says like, I deny you, and he's able to channel the one power, of course, and defeat him. Again,
he talks about like there's
specifics.
So there's like Baal-Zaman is attached to like a black tether, and he's huge, and he's like basically wielding like the dark energy of the world. And Rand has his power connected to like the light. And I don't know if this is the scene, but there's a scene where Baal-Zaman like taunts Rand with like his mom and Egwene and Nynaeve, and how he controls the dead, and he's like, like he basically tortures her and makes her scream, and Rand's like, I deny you. I deny you. So Rand eventually summons this blade of pure light and cuts the tether to the dark power that Beelzebub has, and at that point he seems vanquished, and then Rand is transported back to the Eye of the World after like defeating the enemies, like the Trollocs and the
defeating the Forsaken Agenor, defeating the Trollocs, and then defeating Beelzebub. The trifecta.
Yeah. And don't forget the Murdral in there too, and all the forces and everything.
Yep.
So he's like wiped out, and exhausted, and he finds his way back to Moraine, who knows what he is. He is the Dragon Reborn. And she said, no male Aes Sedai could channel that much power without dying, basically. Yep. And those are from 3,000 years ago. And Rand is just like, I touched the one power. I can't believe that I touched that. And he's just in total disbelief. And then there's Moraine, Lan, Nynaeve, and Egwene know that he is the Dragon Reborn, but Loyal and Mat and Perrin do not know that he is the Dragon Reborn. So now there's a gap that Rand knows something that his best friends do not, and now he has to start keeping secrets from them.
Yep.
And that's basically where the book ends. Right there is after all of this.
Yeah, and Rand's really concerned because he thinks because he can channel the one power, like he's gonna go insane, and so he's worried about that, and that's kind of where like his little story ends. Is it if he's the Dragon Reborn? I assume that means he's not gonna go insane. Like the Dragon Reborn is like the one who will like restore order to like the male half. I think that's kind of.
Well, I don't know, because you know what? At the beginning, like before Emond's Field, there was a introduction where it talks about Luz Theron Kinslayer.
Yeah, the prologue. Yeah,
the prologue, and how he was going through his wrecked palace with all the dead bodies, and how he
which is what he did. He did that himself.
Yeah, and he's the person who created all the wreckage and all the dead bodies of people he knew and people he loved, even his wife. So I think the dragon is supposed to go crazy. I think that's what's supposed to happen.
He was the last Dragon Reborn, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
And and so he ended up killing a bunch of people. And then he had a little moment of sanity where he realized what he did, and then he like destroys himself and creates Dragon Mount near Moreth. I can't even say it.
Moretharin or something.
Yeah, where all the Two Rivers people. It's the old blood, and it became weak, just like a river spreads into 1,000 rivers, but rivers can come back together, and they're Taviran, and they have Mornetherin blood, and they are a thorn to the Dark One's foot. And that's all story that Moraine told back in Emond's Field to all the people there. And they have strong blood, is basically like the...
Yeah. I love how things that are told in the beginning of the story have, like, you can see all the little nuggets throughout the story, and then how they're important at the end. I think it's good storytelling, and like all the foreshadowing throughout the story about things that would happen later on.
So what did you think of the ending of the book there, and like how do you think the book wrapped up in your thoughts?
I thought it was a good ending. I think I said this in the last episode, like I didn't really like know what we were building towards. You know what I mean? Like I didn't necessarily know that there was going to be like a battle with the Forsaken and Beelzebub and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like I guess, surprising maybe. Like that was how the story ended. Because I guess like with the Dark One, like he is the big bad. Like I didn't expect them to like fight him at the end of book 1. You know what I mean? That seems like it's a thing that's going to happen like way down the line. But yeah, there's probably just like way more to the story and the world and like what the Dark One is and like what he's capable of. So yeah, it's hard to know like what's gonna happen in the next books. But yeah, I don't know, maybe that just like caught me off guard a little bit. I thought it was I think it was really well written, and it was really really cool scenes at the end with him channeling the power and that the sword of light.
And it all happened so fast.
Yeah, it was really fast.
I like had to listen to that part several times. I was like, okay, so he beats the Forsaken, then he's like magically transported to the battlefield, and then like I had to reread like how he took out so many Trollocs and Fades and
yeah, this would definitely benefit from a reread of certain parts for sure. Just because there's so many details that if you read it just once, you probably will miss. Because like of future revelations, like things you read in the beginning of the book, like you may have missed their importance until you got to the very end. So like if you went back and reread the earlier parts of the book, like you'd be like, oh, this now is pointing me to what happened later on. You can kind of maybe connect all of the dots better than like just on your first read through. It might be like difficult to like pick up on everything.
Yeah, 3 things that stick out to me is kind of like Beelzebub and the dreams and how those kind of like evolve. Another is the dagger and how Matt starts to change, and then there was a third that I was thinking of. Can't remember now, but yeah, I think those are things that are like, oh, those are like now that I understand the way it all fits together, like those are things that kind of stuck out to me as I reread the book. And then at the end we have the return to Faldarra, and we have a magical gift called the Horn of Valir that's brought into Faldarra, which basically summons a bunch of like powerful allies to fight in whatever war that you're fighting. And it's always, there's the hunt for the horn, which has been alluded to throughout the entire book. Like there's stories about it, and there's like people go out and hunt for the horn, and here it is. They found the Horn of Valir, and they bring it back to Faldarra to, because that's the place where they're fighting the most, because they're on the edge of the Blight, and they need the most support against the Dark One.
Yeah. I think...
Should I jump? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to try and think of something like from a Christian worldview, like talking a little bit about maybe the whole thing we're saying like you have to deny the Dark One so he doesn't have power over you. I thought that was like
my quote?
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, do your quote.
I think that'll be a good lead into this. All right, so I picked out a quote. It's about halfway through the book from Moraine. The father of lies is a good name for the Dark One. It was always his way to seed a worm of doubt wherever he could. It eats at men's minds like a canker. When you believe the father of lies, it is the first step towards surrender. Remember, if you surrender to the Dark One, he will make you his.
Good quote. So
why'd you pick that intro in? I picked that because it's we were talking about sin earlier, and Satan is also good at twisting. Satan knew the Bible backwards and forwards, and he was good at putting out half truths and almost truths to try and bend people to his way. And we know that Jesus is able to fight back with Scripture because he has a full understanding of what God's word mean, even more so than the devil, who tries to trick him into a foolish response. And so it says, when you believe the father of lies, it's the first step towards surrender. So to me, that meant like when we believe something that is not of God, we slowly start to turn towards it like more and more. And that is a way that can lead you further and further into sin.
Yep.
Like belief that watching porn doesn't hurt anybody, and that's like a belief that a lot of people have because it's like, I'm doing this on my own time, no one's doing their other thing. But I've seen the way that it can creep into marriage and relationships and just rip them apart. And so like if you believe that that isn't something that can hurt you, remember, if you surrender to the dark one, he will make you his. Like, not saying that's an all-encompassing thing, but
Sure.
But if you believe those little lies and don't make an effort to combat them, like, it's a way for the devil to work his way into your soul and to have a foothold where he should not have one.
Yep.
So that quote spoke to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good quote. Yeah, that does speak to what I was going to say, just about like denying the dark one, denying the devil. Like, he only has like, as Christians, like, we've been, like, the battle has already been won. Like, we've been liberated from our sin, and Jesus only sees the pure person that he makes us to be. Like, he covers all of our sin. And so, like, our sin doesn't have to have power over us. Like, we let it have power over us because, you know, we like being selfish, or we like how whatever thing it is makes us feel, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, we give it the power because we don't say no. Like, we just give in because sometimes it's too hard to say no, or it's like the easy way.
And it's too easy to say yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was just like an interesting idea of like, the dark one only has power over you, like, if you let him. Like, you have to just say no and deny him to have power over you. And like, that kind of goes back, I don't remember what podcast it was, but like, words have power. I'm trying to remember. It was some Brandon Sanderson book. It might have been Warbreaker, like, speaking, like, you have to speak power into the item, like your breath or whatever, and give it a command and intent. Like, our words have power. And like, scripture is the word of God. So like, to like combat Satan and the dark one, we have to use the words of God and scripture to combat him. Like,
it's the sword in the armor of God, that the words that you use from God are your ways to attack. And then you have like the other parts of, we talked about the armor, like, now I'm forgetting all of them, but you have the helmet and the
breastplate,
the belt, and of truth, and and those are the things that protect you. But knowing the word and knowing it in the way that God wants you to know it is the way that you can go on the offensive and take down the devil and his lies. And like the scene with Jesus before he starts his ministry, where he's tempted in the desert, like, the devil is using scripture against him, but then he's also using scripture to combat the devil. So like, the devil is twisting the scripture to make it seem like it fits his own narrative, but he's taking it out of context and he's using it in a way that's destructive. And Jesus is using it in a way to defeat Satan and to show the truth of God's word. And that's like a picture for how we need to use scripture. Like, we'll hear the devil talking in our ear about like different sin in our life and like why we should give in. But it's important to like, even like, memorize pieces of scripture to like have in your back pocket, to like have, or you can just like pull out your sword. Like, I have this and I'm ready to defeat you. I think it's a lot of times like, I think fantasy stories can help us maybe see like how spiritual battles are like actually present in this world. Like, they can paint a picture of
like the spiritual battle that happens in the real world, whereas maybe it's like it's hard to maybe like imagine it in our head of how that could take place. But I think fantasy stories like Lord of the Rings, or I don't think Wheel of Time is not written from like a Christian perspective, but it has elements of like the Dark One and like corruption and things taking over your mind, and those types of things that are like Christian ideas in a sense, where it can just help us kind of think about our own life and how we like approach those situations where we're confronted with sin, or like someone's trying to convince us to do something that we know is wrong, but in like there's some like the classic like devil sitting on your shoulder, like saying you should do it because it'll be good, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's why fantasy stories are really good, and that's why we're doing this pod. That's why we're doing this podcast.
You got it.
Yeah. I think we're like way over time still, even though we only did like half the book, but that's okay. It's okay. So that's gonna do it for this episode. If you the next episode, we're going to probably do some more Wheel of Time, the Eye of the World. We'll probably talk about some of the characters, because we did a lot of the story, and we kind of hit on some of the character stuff, but we didn't like talk specifically about like them as people and their personality. So we might do that. We might do some other things as well. We'll see what we do. But yeah. If you want to go check out more Pages of Light stuff, you can go to our website, pagesoflight.com. You can also subscribe to us on social media, follow us. We're on YouTube. You can go over there and subscribe and check out the video version of the podcast and some of the other content that I have over there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads if you want to see what we're reading next. And you can follow Gabe, of course, at neighborhoodnerdservices.com and see what he's doing. And the links for all of those things will be in the description, of course, as well as links to buy this first book, The Eye of the World. And by the time you're hearing this, the Wheel of Time TV show should be in full swing. I think the first 3 episodes drop on the 19th of November, and then they'll be going, I think there's 8 episodes. So I think it's the first 3, and then it's a 1 every week after that until the end. So the first season should probably be in the middle of the first season by the time this gets out. So if you're watching the Wheel of Time TV show, let us know what you think about it in the comments. I'll be watching it, of course. I'm not sure. Gabe, will you be watching it?
I need to watch it because it looks awesome.
Yep.
And also, I'm not saying we have to do this, but we might need to wrap around and watch the Dune. Did you watch Dune?
Yeah, I did watch the movie. Yeah, we might need to do like a podcast on just the movie. Yeah,
maybe a bonus episode.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll find time in the schedule to do it. If you want to go support us, you guys can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review about your thoughts on this podcast. And you can also just share it with a friend, like tell somebody else that you like this podcast, and we're talking about Wheel of Time and Christian worldview stuff, and how we can be better Christians through reading of fantasy and science fiction stories. That's gonna do it. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, thanks for coming. As always, remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week, and we will see you guys in the next episode.